This video is the evaluation of burglary, so you would need this for an essay question only on burglary. First of all, the sentence, I would make a positive point. I would say that the law is recognising that burgling somebody's house has a direct impact on the victim, so therefore this is reflected by a longer sentence, so you can get 14 years for burgling somebody's house as opposed to a non-dwelling where there is less of an impact on a victim. The next point, I would talk about the fact it's confusing to have two offences. Why do we have 91A and why do we have 91B? Perhaps they should be merged together. Also, why does section 91B not include criminal damage? It seems strange that you have 3 potential offences for 91A and you only have 2 for 91B. Burglary actually used to include the intent to rape, so if you broke into somebody's house intending to rape them, that would actually be classed as burglary, but I presume that that is now dealt with as an aggravating factor under the Sexual Offences Act 2003. There's a lack of a clear definition of burglary in the Theft Act, so it's good that Parliament made the law because, as we know, Parliament are sovereign. They should be only making, or the only people making law. Judges should be applying and interpreting it. It's democratic. We vote for the House of Commons, so it's not fully democratic because we don't elect our second chamber, the House of Lords. However, Parliament have not properly defined many of the words in the Theft Act. The word building, you could argue, is fairly straightforward. We have got some guidance in the Theft Act. It does state that houseboats and inhabited vessels are included as a building, so that is helpful. And again, it's left to the jury to decide, is it a building? Is it of considerable size and some permanence? Part of a building, again, fairly straightforward. It would be going into the staff room in a shop or going behind the counter in a shop. So perhaps it doesn't need any further clarification. The thing I would also mention is the fact that most shoplifters are actually burglars. If you think about it, you're planning on going shoplifting tomorrow. So you enter a building as a trespasser with the intent to steal. So you would actually be guilty, in theory, of 91A. I would make that point, and then I would say, well, hang on a minute, why aren't people charged with burglary when they shoplift? And then I would answer my own question and I'd say, well, maybe there would be too many cases for the courts to deal with. Shoplifting happens on such a huge scale every single day that if you had to charge all those people with burglary, it would clog up the courts. And also remember that burglary is triable either way. So if you plead not guilty, you have the right to choose a magistrate's case or going to the Crown Court with a jury. So that would take quite a long time and it would cost quite a lot of money. So presumably it's not in the public interest to charge shoplifters with burglary. The other problem we have is there's actually a very low clear-up rate by the police. You're unlikely to go to prison for a long time. And people, they don't tend to just commit one burglary, they commit a lot of burglaries. But even then, you don't often go for the full 14 years. It's very, very rare. And knowing this, as a burglar, would it actually be a deterrent to you? The next issue is about going beyond your permission and being a trespasser. Presumably most people would know they were trespassing. However, what if you were just being nosy? You're at someone's house or in a shop and you saw a door open, you went into that room. You are then becoming a trespasser and you probably know that you shouldn't be there. However, being nosy, is it the same as actually being a criminal? The word entry has been left to the jury to decide. The courts did try and define it previously. They said entry had to be substantial, but then they got the problem of, well, what happens if somebody just leans inside a building? And then they changed their mind and said, well, entry, let's not define it. Actually, it's not a good idea to define it. Let's leave it to the jury. You have the issue of different juries deciding different things, but because it's quite a straightforward word, hopefully it's not too problematic. The other issue is there's a difference between intent to steal and cause GBH. So if you enter a building intending to steal, as opposed to entering a building intending to cause serious injury to someone, to me that seems a lot worse, with entering a building intending to cause serious injury. Yet again, we are lumping them together in the same offence. So are we protecting property above people? Parliament must be reasonably happy with the law because there are no current reform proposals. So it's not their priority. The law probably works quite well in practice in terms of the definition, not necessarily so in terms of convictions, but Parliament seem happy with the law and happy to let judges fill in the gaps. So that's not an exhaustive list. There are probably many more points that I've forgotten to talk about. So please do add your own into an essay, and remember to look at what the question's asking you. If it's asking you about whether the law is fair, try and kind of tailor these points to fairness, for example. Or if it asks you if the law achieves justice, try and tailor these points that we have discussed here as to whether justice is achieved.